Welcome along for today's discussion on what is a spiritual problem. So, when something's physically going on that you need to get yourself to a doctor or a hospital if you break a leg or, something dramatic happens on the physical. And if something happens on the mental level, perhaps you'll exhaust your usual resources that are available to you. But eventually, if there's things that you feel you need some assistance with, maybe you will go to a therapist, or maybe you will go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist if there are so-called mental health problems that you are experiencing. But what about spiritual problems? What are they and where do we go? It's something we don't talk about, do we? Right? And yet it matters. It matters a whole heap, because if we can get the spiritual component right, it has an effect on the psychological components that are going on, which are head and heart together, right? Not just head, but head and heart. And then it also has an effect, a reverberation down to the physical as well, because of course our spiritual health can affect all of the other layers of our health, because we are an interdimensional being, right? We have many dimensions and layers to who we are. So we affect everything. So working on one area is going to work on others. So spiritual problems, how do we identify what this thing is? Because it can seem so kind of obscure and out there. And again, because people don't talk about it, we can't really identify what it is when it comes along. So there's a few things that I wanted to discuss that might, that are in the realms of the spiritual issues. One which I hear a lot from people is the existential question. Why am I here? What am I doing here? And anytime you're bumping up, or someone that you know is bumping up against that wall where they wonder, and this is a really dramatic one, whether my life should carry on or not, right? If someone has suicidal ideation and is wondering, what's the point? What's the point of it all? That is an existential question. Why should I bother with my life on earth? And is there any value in carrying on? This is a matter of spirit, right? This is a spiritual question that we're asking. What is the point? Why am I here? Because underneath that is, what am I connected to? Or what am I disconnected from? And where is the meaning and purpose in that? And so this belongs in the realm of feeding our soul, feeding our spirit, nourishing our spirit and soul. So this is one area, right? The existential questions and quest and issuing and problems. Another is if there's just simply some kind of unsettled feeling in your soul, or soul pain, something that you can't quite describe, you might not have language for, it might not make any sense when you look around you, because maybe your life seems fine, but there is something in your soul that is unsettled, that is uncomfortable. This is a spiritual question as well. This is a spiritual problem to sit with and to explore, or perhaps we can frame it as a spiritual invitation, right? An invitation into, what is it that is agitating me at such a deep level? What is it that I need to be paying attention to? What is it that I'm not seeing or aware of yet in my conscious mind, but that deeper part of me is bringing it to my attention? So again, this is a spiritual question. Then there might be spiritual content that has occurred. Maybe you've had some experiences and it has set off certain consequences and after effects in your life. Again, many of these things might not be explainable. Some people get even electrical things stop working around them, or get a bit funny, lights tweak, technology goes funny if they've had, quite a strong energy activation or some kind of an energetic awakening in their etheric body, right? So this again is a spiritual conversation to have. This is part of the spiritual evolution and growth, right? Life path questions. This is another one. So if you are not feeling aligned in your life path and you're wondering, surely there's more to life, surely there's more to give, surely I can put myself in service in a different way, because something here just isn't deeply, it's not fulfilling me on the deepest levels. I'm good at what I'm good at this, whatever you might currently be doing. Maybe you're in a career path or a job where you're very capable and functioning incredibly well, and you're ticking all of those boxes, but there's something that's just not satisfying about it. You're not excited when you wake up in the morning to do it, even though you're very good at doing what you do, and many people might rely on you, and maybe you even have a big team in terms of what you do, but there's something that just isn't, you're not happy on the inside, you're not smiling on the inside, right? That is a spiritual problem. That is a spiritual matter going on there. And one more that I'll share with you is around love. Love, 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 love. And it's not just love in relationship. There's that aspect of, self-love is a popular term these days. So there's pieces about, but self-love is kind of a big conversation, and people can take that in many different directions, right? But it's more about, care for self, and being able to be compassionate and kind and gentle with yourself. But there's also love in the biggest sense, not only in your intimate relationships, but that sense of love that can be there in all of your relationships, with you and your surrounding, with something greater than self, just the frequency and vibration of love itself. And this is something that pops up in people's spiritual experiences. This is often something that we quest for, and we yearn to feel, even if we don't quite know what it is we're yearning to feel. This can be the substance, the frequency, the feeling that can elude people and yet draws them into experiences, because there's something that needs to be satisfied in the soul. So there it is. There's a bunch of things that can be classified as spiritual problems. And when you are experiencing any of those, chances are, if you try and meet the problem in a physical way or in a mental way, it could take you to a degree to work through what you're going through. But until you address it, until you acknowledge it as part of your spiritual growth, evolution, invitation, growing, until you acknowledge it as part of the spiritual conversation that is part of you as an expanding being, and that it could be very well a spiritual problem that you are dealing with, then there is no psychologist, psychiatrist, or doctor who's really going to be able to help you out, because it's simply not their area. They are not in that area of growth or dialogue and walking through that piece together. I would love to have that conversation with you. Of course, that is my area. But, it is something that first we have to acknowledge. This is a part, and if you try to solve a problem with the wrong tool, it's like hammering the whole house to build the house when actually there are better tools to build, right? You have to understand what's going on. And once you understand what the problem is, then it is easier to know where to look for certain solutions. Peace to you. Have a beautiful day. As always, I love to hear how these land with you. Let me know.